Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome back to VALORANT rostermania. What a crazy story this is. The Sentinels roster seemingly leaked at this point. Dapr stabbed in the back, as he briefly described on Twitter, dropped from the team in crazy circumstances in favour of two players from Loud. Brazilian team meshing with Sentinels in North America, building not only the ultimate clout squad by apparently keeping TenZ, but also building what you could argue is an absolute super team across many different regions. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. You don't want to not press that sub button right now, because there's going to be way more updates on stuff like this over the coming hours and days. This I thought was just hilarious in the context here. Come to Brazil for Sentinels. Turns out Brazil came to Sentinels. We'll see that here in a second. Some quick updates. Patafan, apparently an account owned by him, was spotted playing in scrims with Talent Esports. Lots going on, I'm sure, in the APAC side right now. The soft roster lock for these teams is on October the 15th. They have to say to write what their plan is by then. They don't have to lock anything in until February, but the teams in all the regions will have a good idea what they're doing at this point, APAC most certainly included. Now, one of the other crazy things is this from King, briefly of DRX, but also Vision Strikers. He's flying out to Brazil, so it's like, okay, what's going on here? Because this is the thing, with some Brazilian players seemingly getting poached to North America, Brazil needs some players in return, and I believe the way it works is 3 out of the 5 players have to be from the region in which that team is operating, but they just have to be from the region, as in they have to be from the Americas, right? So if Sentinels players do turn out to be Brazilian guys, that doesn't matter, right? It's still players from that region. It's more about imports from other regions where the questions lie. King, of course, would be an import to Brazil, but like if the Brazilian team gets a couple of North American players, who knows what's going on? It's absolute chaos, and yeah, these crossover teams are pretty immense, to be honest. This just quickly from Bleed, another APAC organization. They've confirmed that they've got something sorted here by, well, 15th of October this is. So in a few days' time, we're going to have a good idea what they're up to. And then also this from Navi, because we saw that seemingly Artis is going to go from the old FPX team, and Artis is going to join NRG as their kind of operator chamber player. Supposedly cNed is the man to replace him. This is pretty crazy. Obviously one of the best operator players in the first year of Valorant. In the second year is pretty good. Not quite as well versed initially on the chamber, but I'm sure he can make that work. As great, of course, with the operator. This Turkish player, I mean, this is really interesting stuff, right? If cNed joins Navi in place of Artis, like obviously that was a fantastic team before. The FPX team is kind of, even if I didn't mention FPX already, they're joining Navi as a 5 minus Artis, potentially plus cNed. So yeah, what do you guys think about that roster? Of course, that obviously would have very high expectations, but really interesting to see all these kind of crossover, nationalities and regions coming together now for the franchise league, and it's certainly the case in North America as well. Will it work out from kind of a language perspective? That's also a question that will be asked of this Sentinels roster that we are about to see. This was one of the things that started out yesterday when Sadak says, or when Flynn says here, that Sadak may be moving to Leviathan, kind of saying about, okay, Sadak's on the move, the Loud's team, as we expected, is going to break apart. Whether Loud broke apart for monetary reasons, who knows, but that may be argued just because some of their top players have been poached by some other organizations. This confirmed then by Dapr last night. Crazy in light of the fact that we believed, like Dapr, like George Geddes said, of course things changed, not like George Geddes was wrong, but like, he said that Dapr was going to stay on Sentinels. He was like 100% going to stay. Dapr even said on stream just 2 or so days ago that even maybe a day and a half ago, I don't even know, I did a video on it, when he said, yeah, I'm staying on Sen, like, don't worry about me, it's all good, I've got it under control, they told me I'm staying, effectively. And then he tweeted out something like stabbed in the back or knifed in the back or something. He then deleted that one and tweeted this out instead. Sentinels have offered me a role as a sub, but have given me the ability to look for a new team as an unrestricted free agent. Effectively saying, yes, like, he's been dropped, right? Now he can stay on the bench if he wants, but like, I don't imagine he wants to do that. He'll want to join another team. But again, you could argue interesting behavior here from Sentinels. Like, the organization and the way they've kind of managed things has definitely caught a bit of flack lately, because Dapr believed just a couple of days ago he was going to stay, as did the community. Now, imagine they were having discussions behind the scenes, and in fairness, it might not be their fault, right? They were probably having discussions with players they wanted to bring on. Now those deals are going to get finalized. Dapr then gets released. The issue is for Dapr, though, is that many other teams, the likes of NRG and others, like 100 Thieves, Cloud9 and such, they have now locked in their roster. I think Dapr's a great player, honestly, and deserves to be on a franchise team. But a lot of the other potential candidates have now locked in their rosters, because by the time Dapr's been released, it's rather late, right, in the kind of life cycle of this rostermania period. So Dapr might struggle. Of course, like, Evil Genius is is still the big question mark in all of this, because they still don't really seem to be doing all that much, but surely they should just build a kind of a super team of arguably the leftovers, like just mishmash all the leftover players, and like leftover not exactly meaning bad, because some incredibly talented players, Dapr included, getting dropped in this circumstance. As he goes on to say, been dealt bad hands consistently in my esports career, I've never let it stop me, you can be certain this one isn't either. So he's going to do his best to get back somewhere else, but Dapr dropped, and that raised the question, what's going on here, especially because we thought this was a viable roster. Artis was initially in the conversation, he's going to go to NRG, but Dephh, Zekyn, Marved, Dapr, what's happening there? We were like, well, if Marved comes in, can TenZ still be there with the drama that they have? Turns out TenZ can still be there, because Marved is not the controller. The controller is going to be Pancada. Bombshell article from George Geddes last night. Sentinels are signing 2 Brazilian world champions from the Loud roster that just won champs like only a few weeks ago. Pancada and Sacy in discussions to join Sentinels. Dapr is going to be gone, as we saw. TenZ will likely stay. So at least this time I think Dapr found out from his team rather than from the George Geddes article. But yeah, this is crazy. And this is, I think a lot of people would say, arguably the best of both worlds. I would have been mind blown if TenZ was gone. I said it a few times here that the rumors were kind of pushing that direction, but I was like, surely Sentinels are that stupid to get rid of TenZ. But if you do keep TenZ, what roster do you build around him that makes sense and is an upgrade and also can, work in terms of chemistry and stuff? And apparently the way to go is just to sign a couple of reigning world champions. This is as the article here describes, and a lot of sources as well have verified that this is happening or is either going to happen. George Geddes wouldn't do this article if he wasn't like 95, 99% sure this is going to go through. Just because they're in conversations right now doesn't necessarily mean that will stay that way, doesn't mean the deals are necessarily signed, especially on the TenZ side, because as he describes here, Sentinels superstar TenZ will likely round out the roster, but the deal is incomplete, because my understanding is that TenZ, as an unrestricted free agent, has been asking for a lot of money from these teams, Sentinels included. Whether they can come to an arrangement there with TenZ's salary, whether it's going to take a bit of time, we'll see. But yeah, TenZ wants a lot of money. Whether they can figure that out, I'm sure they will, but it might just take a little bit of time to get things confirmed. That, therefore, is the roster of 5. Zekyn, we know, is confirmed. Dephh, we believe, is coming in as their IGL British player, of course. Then TenZ is going to be the only man to stay, plus Sacy and Pancada from Loud. I mean, that's just crazy stuff. Pancada comes in, I suppose, as the controller here. Sacy kind of fills out Dapr's role, and yeah, what a crazy team, right? Not only have they managed to get some really exciting plays in here, they've kept TenZ, so they've kept, that side of the argument in play, but also they've kind of combined to some degree the Brazilian scene here in Sentinels and just built like a great team in terms of raw power on this roster, because I was kind of confused as to where the players were going to come from that really were going to upgrade this team. This is one way to go, and it's a pretty incredible way to go, to be perfectly honest. Now, one question I do have is, what about the kind of the communication here, just because not sure how good, I know Sacy's English is good, not sure quite how good Pancada's English is, whether they'll need to do some sort of translation thing going on there, or whether he's going to learn to be really good at English or whatever. So definitely interesting always from that perspective, and also from the kind of chemistry perspective when you've got players of many different nationalities playing in a roster together. But what a ridiculous storyline. I certainly didn't see this one coming. I was kind of surprised at what Sentinels were doing, and I thought there were a few options on the table that didn't make that much sense. I didn't really put 2 and 2 together and think that some of the Loud guys were going to end up joining Sentinels at the end of the day, but turns out that is pretty much exactly what we believe is happening. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on this. Do you like this Sentinels team? I think it kind of meshes the best of both worlds to some degree in terms of what they were trying to achieve here. Be still a great team with a lot of clout and, in the top of the community's minds, but also probably upgrade their team on paper rather significantly. But also I do feel, bad for guys like Dapr, who I thought was honestly a very viable candidate still to stay. So yeah, super team who they tweet out, is this, does this qualify, right? I think honestly it kind of does to some degree. Sentinels come in with this team, you've got Cloud9 coming in, you've got Fnatic trying to build an absolute juggernaut over there with Chronicle coming in. There are many big teams in many different big regions here, and yeah, it's going to be an absolutely epic franchising era, no doubt. And obviously Zekyn's coming out and saying, look, I just work here. Like, people are talking trash to Zekyn, right, for getting Dapr dropped or whatever. He's sitting back relaxing and seeing what's happening, right? But we saw what he said to Tarek just yesterday or the day before, where he was like, yeah, I'm confident in this roster we're building. It's a pretty exciting roster. Turns out definitely to be the case. I didn't expect this one. Now, the other question just here to finish up the video on it is now what happens with Marved, because Marved obviously is not going to be at Sentinels now because Pancada is taking that controller role, and TenZ probably didn't want to play with him anyway, or they didn't want to have that thing happen. So where does Marved go? He's not going to EG. He said that he's not going to EG unless like he thought he had a better offer elsewhere, and now he might come crawling back to EG if they do decide to make changes changes, I don't know, but he said outright he's not going to join EG, no chance. Obviously, 100 Thieves is set, Cloud9, Sentinels not going to have him. That leaves either a Brazilian org, Latin American org, European org, APAC org, or NRG, because we don't know yet what NRG is going to be. I think George Geddes has said that their kind of team is going to be set in stone as FNX Victor Crashies with Som as, of course, well, Ardis is the kind of chamber, and then Som on the smokes. But would you be overwhelmingly surprised to see NRG change their mind and say, you know what, after all said and done, let's bring Marved in, put Som on the bench, for example? Because, I mean, look, I like Som as a player, don't get me wrong, but if Som gets the starting spot as a controller and Marved doesn't, it kind of feels a little bit like, you know, maybe that's not exactly gone as you would have expected it to, especially because the entire OpTic core is there. Why would Marv not go as well, especially given all of his other offers and potential is now off the table, especially in the North American franchises? So definitely intrigued to your thoughts on that one. Where does Marved now end up? Does he go to NRG after all with Som as the 6th man? I don't know. That's kind of what I might expect to happen at this point, but like all these region changes are happening, so why not Marved go to another organization? Because Loud are going to need some players as well. That's the other side of this discussion, which I'm sure might get answered in due course as well, because this region swapping stuff is certainly not over for now. Very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit a like button, tells your YouTube gods this is a good video, others like you should see it as well, and help grow the competitive Valorant community. Thank you as always, take care, and I'll see you next time.